Ryan was saying that too, so I'm not the only one. Rock has its own kind of unique energy.
Well, it's not for me. Because or work.
Yeah, or whatever.
Or
Never even fit into a person.
Just like,
I mean, it's easy for you to say when you're good.
Sorry, I just don't want you to get in trouble.
I know.
focus up. This is very serious.
Pina colada?
I don't like the taste of alcohol. My taxes, I do.
You.
Trying to say that you said you dropped your guys, Sarah.
Field trip to the bar.
All right.
Do what?
Fuck that.
School musical?
Sarah will sing in bar with
My
you guys.
car's headed to Greedos.
We could drop her off on the way.
I can take you.
have it. Great, just bought a guy's heroin.
Who would know this?
Not funny, didn't know what it's like to need.
Well, it's not. It's just a job.
Feeling love, and I want to feel love if I want to.
Most fantasy stories begin by telling us who the hero is. Game of Thrones begins by warning us that heroes may not survive. Across 8 seasons, the series builds a world of kings, exiles, assassins, prophets, dragons, and ancient creatures. But beneath all that spectacle, its central idea is brutally simple. Every character believes they understand the game being played. Almost every character is wrong. The nobles of Westeros fight over a throne made from the swords of defeated enemies. They arrange marriages, trade secrets, betray allies, and destroy entire families to control it. Yet far beyond their castles, an older enemy is awakening. While the living argue about who deserves to rule, death is quietly marching south. That contradiction drives the entire series. The Iron Throne appears to be the most important object in the world, but the longer the story continues, the more meaningless it becomes. The people most determined to possess it often lose everything. The characters who turn away from it sometimes discover something greater, and those who try to protect the realm are repeatedly betrayed by the people they're trying to save. The story opens north of the Wall, a massive structure of ice separating the 7 kingdoms from the frozen wilderness beyond. 3 members of the Night's Watch investigate signs of violence among the wildlings. They expect human enemies. Instead, they encounter pale, unnatural beings remembered only in children's stories. The White Walkers have returned. This opening is more than a frightening introduction. It reveals the truth before the political story has even begun. The greatest danger in this world is already present, and almost no one is prepared to believe it. One survivor flees south, abandoning his duty. He reaches the lands controlled by House Stark, where Lord Eddard Stark must execute him for desertion. Ned doesn't enjoy killing the frightened man, but he believes that the person who passes judgment should also carry out the sentence. It's an early demonstration of the code that defines him: responsibility, honesty, and duty. Those qualities make Ned admirable. They will also make him dangerously unprepared for the capital. Ned rules Winterfell with his wife, Catelyn, and their children. Robb is the eldest son and expected heir. Sansa dreams of castles, princes, and the graceful life of a southern lady. Arya rejects those expectations, preferring bows, swords, and freedom. Bran loves climbing Winterfell's walls and towers. Young Rickon remains close to the family, while Theon Greyjoy lives among the Starks as both ward and political hostage. Then there is Jon Snow, Ned's illegitimate son. Jon grows up beside the Stark children, but never completely belongs among them. Ned treats him with affection, and the Stark sons accept him as a brother, yet Catelyn sees Jon as a constant reminder of her husband's supposed betrayal. Jon carries the name Snow, used for children born outside marriage in the North, and the name follows him like a permanent judgment. That feeling of exclusion will shape almost every decision Jon makes. After the execution, the Starks discover a dead direwolf with 6 surviving pups. Direwolves are the ancient symbol of House Stark, and there happens to be one animal for each Stark child, including Jon. The discovery feels like fate, though Game of Thrones rarely offers fate without demanding a price. Jon initially steps aside, assuming the 5 legitimate Stark children should receive the pups. Then he finds a 6th animal separated from the others, a silent albino direwolf with red eyes. He names it Ghost. The bond between the children and their wolves becomes one of the series' earliest expressions of identity. Each animal reflects something within its owner. Arya's wolf is independent. Sansa's is gentle and trusting. Bran's becomes connected to mysteries he cannot yet understand. Ghost is different from the rest, just as Jon believes himself to be. The fragile peace at Winterfell ends when King Robert Baratheon travels north with the royal court. Robert and Ned were once young warriors who fought together against the Targaryen dynasty. Their rebellion placed Robert on the Iron Throne and ended centuries of Targaryen rule. But the victorious king arriving at Winterfell is no longer the powerful warrior Ned remembers. Robert has become exhausted, indulgent, and increasingly disconnected from the kingdom he rules. He hasn't come only to visit an old friend. Jon Arryn, the previous Hand of the King, has died. Robert wants Ned to replace him. The position would make Ned the King's chief advisor and bring him directly into the politics of King's Landing. Ned has little interest in leaving the North, but refusing his king and friend is difficult. Robert strengthens the alliance by proposing that his son, Prince Joffrey, marry Ned's daughter Sansa. To Sansa, Joffrey appears to be everything she imagined a prince should be. He is handsome, royal, and destined to inherit the throne. She doesn't yet understand that appearances are among the most dangerous weapons in Westeros. Catelyn then receives a secret message from her sister Lysa, Jon Arryn's widow. Lysa claims that Jon was murdered by members of House Lannister, the powerful family of Robert's queen. Suddenly, Robert's invitation no longer feels like an honor. It feels like the beginning of an investigation. Queen Cersei Lannister is intelligent, proud, and fiercely protective of her children. Her twin brother, Jaime, is one of the kingdom's most celebrated knights, though many call him the Kingslayer because he murdered the last Targaryen king despite being sworn to protect him. Their younger brother Tyrion is mocked because of his stature, but his sharp mind allows him to see weaknesses others miss. The Lannisters have wealth, influence, and access to the throne. They also carry secrets capable of destroying the kingdom. Ned reluctantly accepts Robert's offer, believing he can protect his friend and discover what happened to Jon Arryn. Before the families leave Winterfell, the youngest generation begins moving towards separate destinies. Sansa expects to become a princess. Arya fears being forced into a life she doesn't want. Bran imagines becoming a knight. Jon prepares to join the Night's Watch, hoping service at the Wall will give him the honor and belonging denied to him at Winterfell. Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, two surviving members of the deposed Targaryen family live in exile. Viserys Targaryen is obsessed with reclaiming the Iron Throne. He remembers his family's lost power, but has learned none of the qualities required to restore it. His younger sister, Daenerys, has spent most of her life under his control. Viserys treats her not as family but as a political resource. He arranges her marriage to Khal Drogo, the leader of a vast Dothraki army. In exchange, Viserys expects Drogo to help invade Westeros. At this point, Daenerys appears almost powerless. She has no army, no home, and no freedom. Her brother controls her future, and her marriage is designed to serve his ambition. Yet the wedding gives her 3 petrified dragon eggs, beautiful relics from a supposedly extinct age. Like the White Walkers in the opening scene, those eggs quietly tell us that the world's forgotten magic isn't as dead as people believe. Back at Winterfell, Bran continues climbing despite his mother's warnings. During one of these climbs, he reaches an abandoned tower and looks through a window. Inside, he discovers Jaime and Cersei together, revealing that the Queen's children were secretly fathered by her twin brother rather than King Robert. In a single moment, Bran uncovers the secret behind the entire political crisis. If Robert learns the truth, Cersei's children will lose their claim to the throne. House Lannister may be ruined. War could follow. Jaime sees Bran at the window and understands exactly what the boy's discovery means. Then he pushes Bran from the tower. The fall changes the direction of the whole series. Until this moment, the Starks are one family preparing for a difficult separation. After it, they become targets inside a conspiracy they barely understand. Bran survives but lies unconscious, his body broken. Catelyn refuses to leave his bedside, while Ned prepares to travel south without knowing what caused the fall. The apparent accident creates emotional fractures within the family. Jon must say goodbye to Bran without knowing whether his brother will ever wake. Ned leaves Winterfell carrying responsibility for the kingdom, while Catelyn remains behind with a growing sense that something is terribly wrong. An assassin soon enters Bran's room carrying a blade made from Valyrian steel. Catelyn fights desperately to protect her son, and Bran's direwolf kills the attacker. The attempted murder confirms that Bran's fall wasn't an ordinary accident. Someone is afraid of what he may remember. Catelyn secretly travels south to warn Ned. She takes the assassin's weapon with her, hoping its rare material will reveal who arranged the attack. This is where the real game begins. Ned believes truth can expose corruption. Catelyn believes evidence can identify an enemy. Jon believes honor can give him a new life. Sansa believes royalty will fulfill her dreams. Daenerys believes survival requires obedience. Every one of them is about to discover that Westeros punishes simple beliefs, and the most dangerous players haven't even made their first move. Ned Stark leaves Winterfell believing he's entering a dangerous political environment. What he doesn't yet understand is that King's Landing isn't simply corrupt. It's a place where corruption has become the normal language of power. On the long road south, the royal party already begins to reveal the divisions that will later tear the kingdom apart. Robert spends more time drinking and hunting than governing. Cersei watches everyone around her with suspicion. Joffrey enjoys the protection of his position without understanding the responsibility that should come with it. Sansa remains fascinated by him, while Arya sees something false beneath his polished appearance. The difference between the Stark sisters becomes painfully clear beside a river, where Arya is practicing swordplay with Mika, a butcher's son. Their game is harmless until Joffrey arrives with Sansa. Wanting to humiliate someone beneath his social rank, Joffrey threatens Mika with a real sword. Arya refuses to stand aside. When Joffrey hurts Mika, Arya strikes the prince, and her dire wolf Nymeria attacks him. Joffrey, terrified and embarrassed, is disarmed by a girl he considers inferior. Arya throws his sword into the river, while Nymeria escapes with her into the woods. This scene matters because it exposes Joffrey before the court reaches King's Landing. He isn't brave. His cruelty depends on knowing that others can't strike back. The moment someone resists him, his arrogance collapses into fear, but fear doesn't make him truthful. When the adults investigate, Joffrey claims that Arya and Mika attacked him without cause. Arya tells the truth. Sansa witnessed everything, yet, when asked to choose between her sister and the prince she hopes to marry, she says she can't remember. For Ned, this isn't merely a childhood dispute. It is his first warning that joining the royal family will require compromises his children aren't ready to understand. Arya sends Nymeria away to save her from execution. Unable to punish the missing wolf, Cersei demands another victim. Sansa's direwolf lady must die instead. Robert knows the punishment is unjust, but he refuses to challenge his wife. That weakness reveals something essential about the king. Robert may command armies and wear a crown, yet inside his own family, he repeatedly avoids difficult confrontations. His refusal to make principled choices creates space for Cersei's influence to grow. Ned carries out Lady's death himself because he won't allow a stranger to do it. The act is devastating precisely because Lady is innocent. Sansa loses the creature most closely connected to her identity before she even reaches the capital. Her dream of southern life has already demanded its first sacrifice, but she still can't accept what the sacrifice means. Mika receives even less justice. Sandor Clegane, Joffrey's heavily scarred protector known as the Hound, hunts the boy down and kills him. The message is unmistakable. A prince's lie matters more than a common child's life. While Ned continues south, Jon travels north with Tyrion Lannister toward the Wall. Jon still imagines the Night's Watch as an honorable brotherhood guarding the realm. He has grown up hearing stories of brave men standing against dangers beyond civilization. The reality is far less romantic. Castle Black is cold, neglected, and filled mostly with criminals, unwanted sons, defeated men, and people who had no better place to go. The Watch has lost much of its former strength. Its members stare into the wilderness, but most of Westeros barely remembers why the wall was built. Jon initially responds with arrogance. Because he was trained at Winterfell by skilled men, he easily defeats the other recruits. He sees their lack of ability without recognizing their lack of opportunity. Tyrion forces him to look again. The other recruits didn't grow up in a castle. Many never held a proper sword before arriving. Jon's victories don't prove that he's naturally superior. They prove that he was privileged, even if he never felt fully accepted at home. This is one of Tyrion's greatest strengths. He understands how resentment can distort a person's view of the world. Tyrion has spent his life being judged for his body, but he has also grown up with Lannister wealth. He knows that someone can be wounded and privileged at the same time. Jon begins helping the recruits instead of humiliating them. He forms friendships with men such as Gren and Pip, slowly building the sense of brotherhood he came north to find. He also meets Samwell Tarly, a frightened young man sent to the Wall by a father who considered him an embarrassment. Sam can't fight and doesn't pretend otherwise. When the Master-at-Arms orders the recruits to attack him, Jon protects Sam and persuades the others to do the same. Jon's decision marks an early transformation. At Winterfell, he was consumed by what he lacked. At the Wall, he begins noticing people who have been denied far more. Yet his frustration hasn't disappeared. He wants to become a ranger like his uncle Benjen Stark, who travels beyond the Wall. Jon believes ranging will prove his courage and give him purpose. Instead, he's assigned to serve Lord Commander Jeor Mormont as a steward. Jon interprets the assignment as an insult. Sam helps him recognize that it may actually be preparation for leadership. By serving directly under the Lord Commander, Jon can learn how the entire Watch operates. Once again, Jon's first interpretation is shaped by insecurity. He sees rejection where someone else may be creating an opportunity. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys is also beginning to reinterpret her position. Her marriage to Drogo starts with fear and isolation. She doesn't speak the Dothraki language, doesn't understand their customs, and remains trapped between her husband's power and her brother's ambition. Viserys continues treating her as property, assuming she'll remain obedient even as her status grows. But Daenerys starts learning. She asks her handmaidens how to communicate with Drogo rather than merely submit to him. She learns the Dothraki language and begins to understand the people traveling around her. Her confidence grows as she realizes that she is no longer dependent solely on Viserys. Then she discovers that she is pregnant. The Dothraki believe her son may become the prophesied stallion who mounts the world, a conqueror destined to unite the Khalasars. Whether the prophecy is trustworthy matters less than the effect it has on Daenerys. For the first time, thousands of people view her not as Viserys' frightened sister, but as a Khaleesi carrying their future. Viserys can't tolerate the change. He expected Daenerys' marriage to strengthen him. Instead, it exposes how little authority he actually possesses. The Dothraki don't respect his family name. They see an impatient outsider demanding rewards he hasn't earned. The more Daenerys gains confidence, the more violently Viserys attempts to remind her of the person she used to be. But that person is disappearing. When he strikes her, Daenerys strikes back. She warns him that the next time he raises a hand against her will be the last time he has hands. It's the first moment when the balance between them visibly reverses. Viserys still speaks as though he is the dragon, the rightful king who cannot be challenged. Yet Daenerys is beginning to understand that his identity is built almost entirely from threats and memories. In King's Landing, Ned enters a different kind of captivity. Robert's court is surrounded by people whose loyalty is impossible to measure. Petyr Baelish, known as Littlefinger, manages the kingdom's finances and presents himself as a useful ally. Varys, the king's spymaster, seems to know secrets before the people involved understand them themselves. Grand Maester Pycelle performs the role of a harmless old advisor, while Renly Baratheon, Robert's younger brother, observes the court with ambitions of his own. Ned's first major discovery is financial. The crown is deeply in debt, despite the wealth and power associated with the throne. Robert has spent enormous sums on feasts, tournaments, and pleasures while borrowing heavily from House Lannister. The king isn't merely married to Cersei. His government is financially dependent on her family. Robert orders an extravagant tournament to celebrate Ned's appointment as Hand. Ned objects to the cost, but Robert treats the debt like an inconvenience someone else can solve. The exchange shows why the realm has become vulnerable. Robert won the throne through warfare, but he has no patience for the slow discipline of ruling. Ned begins investigating Jon Arryn's final days. He learns that Jon had been visiting particular people in the city and reading a book recording the lineages of noble families. The clues seemed disconnected at first. Jon spoke to a blacksmith's apprentice named Gendry, who looks remarkably like Robert. He investigated the king's illegitimate children. He repeatedly studied physical traits passed through family bloodlines. Before Ned can understand the full pattern, Catelyn arrives in the capital. Littlefinger hides her in one of his establishments and brings Ned to meet her. Catelyn shows them the dagger used in the attempt on Bran's life. Littlefinger claims the weapon once belonged to him but was lost in a wager to Tyrion Lannister. The accusation gives the Starks what appears to be a clear enemy. Yet Littlefinger is one of the most dangerous people in the series because he rarely needs to tell a complete lie. He offers fragments, half-truths, and carefully shaped information, allowing other people to build the conclusion he wants. Ned trusts Catelyn's judgment and continues searching for evidence against the Lannisters. Catelyn attempts to return north unnoticed, but during her journey she stops at an inn and unexpectedly sees Tyrion. Tyrion is returning from the Wall with no idea that he has been linked to Bran's attempted murder. Catelyn initially tries to remain hidden. Then Tyrion recognizes her and publicly greets her. In that instant, she knows that allowing him to leave could warn the Lannisters that the Starks are investigating them. She looks around the room and identifies knights and soldiers whose families owe loyalty to her father's house. Calling upon those old bonds, she accuses Tyrion of trying to murder her son and orders his arrest. The decision transforms private suspicion into open conflict. Until this moment, the Starks and Lannisters have been circling one another through secrets, clues, and quiet threats. Now a member of one great house has seized a member of the other, and the most tragic part is that Tyrion is innocent of the crime. The Starks believe they have finally captured one of the people responsible for destroying their family. In reality, they have moved exactly where someone else wanted them to move. Catelyn doesn't take Tyrion north to Winterfell. She knows the main roads will be watched, so she leads her prisoner east toward the Vale, where her sister Lysa Arryn rules from the Eyrie. The journey immediately reveals why Tyrion remains dangerous even without a weapon. He studies the people holding him, identifies their anxieties, and searches for weaknesses in the story they've accepted. He repeatedly denies ordering the attack on Bran, but Catelyn sees every objection as another clever attempt to escape responsibility. Her certainty is understandable. The dagger was found in the assassin's hand, and Littlefinger connected it directly to Tyrion. Yet the case depends almost entirely on information provided by a man whose motives Catelyn hasn't questioned. This is one of the series' recurring tragedies. Intelligent characters often recognize that the world is filled with liars, then decide that the particular liar helping them must be trustworthy. The road to the Eyrie is narrow, exposed, and vulnerable to attacks from the mountain clans. When the traveling party is ambushed, Tyrion could attempt to flee. Instead, he helps his captors survive. His choice doesn't prove innocence, but it complicates the image Catelyn has formed of him. Tyrion understands that escaping alone into hostile mountains would probably get him killed. More importantly, he knows that surviving the accusation requires more than running. He must reach a place where he can challenge it publicly. The Eyrie appears almost impossible to attack, positioned high above the Vale, but the castle's isolation has created its own kind of madness. Lysa Arryn is no longer the sister Catelyn remembers. She is fearful, unstable, and consumed by protecting her young son, Robin. She claims the Lannisters murdered her husband, yet she seems less interested in proving Tyrion's guilt than in punishing someone who represents the family she hates. She imprisons Tyrion inside a sky cell, a chamber open on one side to a deadly drop. The cell is designed to break prisoners through cold, sleeplessness, and terror. Tyrion survives by doing what he has always done, understanding what another person wants. His jailer wants gold. Tyrion promises it. When he is brought before Lysa's court, Tyrion declares that he wishes to confess. The room expects an admission of attempted murder. Instead, he begins listing comic personal offenses and embarrassing behavior, mocking the proceedings without admitting to either Bran's attack or Jon Arryn's death. Then he demands a trial by combat. Under the laws of the realm, the gods may judge his guilt through a fight between champions. Lysa chooses Ser Vardis Aegon, an experienced knight. Tyrion looks around the hall for someone willing to defend him. No great lord volunteers. No honorable knight risks his life for the accused Lannister. Bronn does. Bronn is a sellsword who has traveled with the party and observed Tyrion closely. He doesn't step forward because he believes in justice. He steps forward because he sees opportunity. If Tyrion survives, a wealthy Lannister may reward the man who saved him. The fight demonstrates the difference between ceremonial honor and practical survival. Ser Vardis wears heavy armor and follows the recognized style of a knight. Bronn moves constantly, avoids direct exchanges, allows his opponent to become exhausted, and uses the environment to his advantage. The watching nobles condemn him for not fighting honorably. Bronn has no interest in satisfying their expectations. He kills Vardis and wins Tyrion's freedom. That victory begins one of the show's most effective relationships. Tyrion can offer Bronn money, status, and access. Bronn can offer Tyrion the physical danger and ruthlessness he lacks. Neither pretends their friendship is based on noble devotion, which sometimes makes it more reliable than the supposedly sacred loyalties surrounding them. While Tyrion escapes the Vale, the consequences of his arrest reach King's Landing. Jaime confronts Ned in the street, demanding to know what has happened to his brother. Ned doesn't have Tyrion and can't order Catelyn from hundreds of miles away, but Jaime treats the arrest as an attack by House Stark. The conversation becomes violence. Lannister soldiers clash with Ned's household guard. Jory Cassel, a loyal Stark captain, is killed. Ned fights Jaime until one of Jaime's men drives a spear through Ned's leg. Jaime is angered by the interference because he wanted to defeat Ned himself, but the result is the same. The king's hand lies injured in the street while Jaime leaves the city. The political system is beginning to collapse. Great houses are no longer arguing through advisors and legal claims. Their soldiers are killing one another in public. Robert returns to find his closest friend wounded and his wife's brother accused. Instead of investigating the deeper conflict, he orders both sides to make peace. He wants Tyrion released and Ned restored as Hand. Robert's response is consistent with every warning we've already seen. He treats peace as the absence of an argument in front of him. He doesn't ask what caused the conflict or whether the accusations are true. He simply wants the discomfort to disappear. But outside the capital, the Lannisters are escalating. Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, attacks villages in the Riverlands. He and his men burn homes, kill civilians, and destroy fields. The raids appear to be random acts of brutality, but the strategy is deliberate. Catelyn Stark was born a Tully, and the Riverlands belonged to her father's house. By terrorizing the region without openly carrying Lannister banners, Tywin Lannister pressures the Tullys and Starks while preserving a thin layer of deniability. Ned hears testimony from the survivors and recognizes the Mountain's methods. With Robert away hunting, Ned sits on the Iron Throne as Hand and delivers judgment. He strips Gregor of his titles, condemns him to death, and summons Tywin Lannister to appear before the court. It is a morally clear decision and a politically explosive one. Tywin is not present when Ned challenges him, but his influence already hangs over the capital. He is one of the wealthiest and most feared men in Westeros, and he has spent his life protecting the authority of House Lannister. By publicly summoning him like a criminal, Ned turns a family conflict into an official confrontation with the crown. Far away in Essos, Viserys faces the final collapse of his own imagined authority. Daenerys has adapted to Dothraki life more successfully than anyone expected. She speaks with confidence, commands respect, and begins making decisions as a Khaleesi. She eats the heart of a stallion during a Dothraki ritual, proving her endurance before the Khalasar. The people celebrate her and the child she carries. Viserys watches his sister receive the devotion he believes belongs to him. He cannot accept that power has shifted because he has never understood power as something that must be earned or maintained. To Viserys, his bloodline should make obedience automatic. Every delay in receiving his army feels like an insult. Every sign of respect shown to Daenerys feels like theft. Ser Jorah Mormont, an exiled Westerosi knight serving Daenerys, warns Viserys that the Dothraki don't respect weakness. Viserys ignores him. He enters a sacred celebration in Vaes Dothrak carrying a sword, violating Dothraki law, then threatens Daenerys and her unborn child. He demands the crown Drogo promised him. Drogo finally agrees to give him one. His men restrain Viserys while Drogo melts gold and pours it over his head. Viserys dies beneath the weight and heat of the crown he wanted more than anything. Daenerys watches without trying to save him. Her reaction isn't simple cruelty. It is recognition. Viserys spent his life insisting that he was a dragon, but fire destroys him like anyone else. For Daenerys, his death removes both an abuser and the person she once believed had the stronger claim to their family's future. She is now the last Targaryen directing that future. Back in King's Landing, Ned finally solves the mystery that killed Jon Arryn. The Book of Noble Lineages records generations of Baratheon children with black hair. Robert's known illegitimate children, including Gendry, share the same dark features. Yet Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen are all blonde like Cersei and Jaime. Jon Arryn's final statement, that the seed is strong, was the conclusion of his investigation. Robert's supposed heirs are not his children. Ned now understands why Jon Arryn was silenced and why Bran was pushed from the tower. He also understands that revealing the truth could lead Robert to execute Cersei and her children. Despite everything the Lannisters have done, Ned cannot separate his sense of justice from his desire to protect children. He confronts Cersei privately and gives her an opportunity to flee before Robert returns from his hunt. Cersei doesn't deny the truth. Instead, she challenges Ned's assumptions about power. She knows he has evidence, but she also knows evidence matters only when someone has enough force to act upon it. Ned believes warning her is an act of mercy. Cersei understands it as advance notice. Before Ned can tell Robert, the king is carried back from the hunt with a mortal wound inflicted by a boar. Robert believes it was a hunting accident. Ned suspects nothing can now be changed in time. As Robert dictates his final wishes, Ned writes that he will serve as protector of the realm until the king's rightful heir comes of age. He avoids naming Joffrey, changing Robert's words without telling his dying friend why. The alteration is the greatest political compromise Ned has made, but it may already be too late. Robert places his trust in a document. Ned places his trust in law. Cersei has spent the time Ned gave her preparing to defeat both. Robert Baratheon dies, believing his final command will protect the kingdom. Ned Stark knows better. The dead king's written order names Ned protector of the realm, but a piece of paper has authority only if the powerful agree to obey it. Cersei has the royal household, the city watch, and the advantage of already being inside the Red Keep. Ned has the truth, a small number of loyal guards, and an expectation that law will matter. He sends messages announcing that Joffrey has no legitimate claim and that Robert's elder surviving brother, Stannis Baratheon, is the lawful heir. Renly Baratheon offers another solution. He urges Ned to seize Cersei's children immediately and take control before the Lannisters can act. Ned refuses. Renly's plan requires arresting frightened children during the night. Even after Bran's fall, the attempted assassination, and the murder of his men, Ned cannot accept using children as political hostages. He assumes there will still be time to proceed properly when morning comes. Renly understands there won't be. He leaves the capital, removing his supporters before the confrontation begins. Ned turns to Littlefinger. The City Watch controls thousands of armed men, and Littlefinger claims he can secure their loyalty. He advises Ned to support Joffrey temporarily, rule through him, and use the arrangement to preserve peace. Ned rejects the proposal because it would mean knowingly placing an illegitimate king on the throne. Instead, he asks Littlefinger to support Stannis. Ned believes he is choosing the lawful path. Littlefinger sees that path as politically inconvenient and personally unprofitable. When Joffrey enters the throne room, Cersei tears up Robert's command. Ned declares that Joffrey has no right to rule and orders the City Watch to take the Queen and her son into custody. For one brief moment, it seems that Ned has won. Then the Gold Cloaks turn their weapons against his men. Littlefinger approaches Ned and reminds him that trusting him was a mistake. The coup succeeds not because Cersei disproves Ned's accusation, but because she controls the people carrying swords. That is the final lesson Ned learns about King's Landing. Truth without power is only a vulnerability. His remaining household guards are killed, and Ned is imprisoned beneath the Red Keep. Sansa is taken into royal custody. Arya escapes only because Syrio Forel, the Braavosi swordmaster who has been teaching her, holds off the Lannister guards long enough for her to flee. Syrio's lessons were presented as sword training, but they were really lessons in awareness. Look with your eyes, hear with your ears, stay balanced, keep moving. Arya survives because she has learned to respond to danger rather than freeze before it. Sansa responds differently. She still wants to believe Joffrey loves her and that Cersei will behave like the gracious queen she once imagined. Under pressure, she writes to Robb and Catelyn, asking them to come south and swear loyalty. The letter is designed by Cersei to divide the Starks, but Sansa doesn't fully understand how she is being used. Her mistake isn't stupidity. It is emotional dependence on a fantasy that has already collapsed. Admitting the truth about Joffrey would mean admitting that Lady died for nothing, that Arya was right, and that the future she wanted was built on cruelty. In the North, Robb recognizes that the message isn't truly his sister's request. He calls the Stark bannermen and prepares to march south. Robb has never commanded a war. Some of his father's vassals see a boy whose authority can be tested. Greatjon Umber openly challenges him, expecting hesitation. When Grey Wind attacks and tears away part of the man's hand, Robb doesn't retreat or apologize. He answers the challenge calmly enough to win Greatjon's respect. The moment shows that Robb possesses a different form of leadership from Ned. He shares his father's sense of duty, but he can project strength in ways Ned often avoids. Catelyn joins his army and helps him navigate the political realities surrounding their campaign. To cross the strategically vital bridge at the Twins, they need the support of Walder Frey, an elderly lord known for remembering every slight and selling his loyalty at the highest possible price. Catelyn negotiates passage, but the agreement carries a future cost. Arya must marry one of the Frey sons, and Robb must marry one of Walder's daughters. Robb accepts because he needs the bridge immediately. The promise seems distant compared with saving Ned and defeating the Lannisters. Game of Thrones never forgets promises simply because its characters do. Robb divides his forces and deceives Tywin Lannister about his true target. While part of the Northern Army draws Tywin away, Robb attacks Jaime's forces and captures him. The victory changes Robb's position overnight. He is no longer only Ned Stark's inexperienced son. He has defeated one of the most famous warriors in Westeros and taken a Lannister prisoner valuable enough to reshape the war. but the victory arrives too late to protect his father. Inside the capital, Varys visits Ned in prison. He explains that open conflict will destroy the realm and endanger Sansa. Ned can protect his daughter by confessing to treason, recognizing Joffrey as the rightful king, and accepting exile to the Night's Watch. Ned initially refuses to dishonor himself with a lie. Varys reminds him that his honor is not the only life at stake. That argument reaches the part of Ned that politics never could. He will sacrifice his reputation for his child. Joffrey's court gathers before the great sept of Baelor. Sansa watches from beside Cersei. Arya hides among the crowd after being found by Yoren, a Night's Watch recruiter who recognizes her and tries to keep her concealed. Ned is brought before the people. He publicly confesses that he attempted to steal Joffrey's throne and declares the boy the lawful king. Every word contradicts what he knows, but he speaks them because he has been promised mercy. Cersei expects Joffrey to send Ned to the wall. Varys expects it. Sansa expects it. Even the executioner appears to be waiting for a different command. Joffrey chooses death. He claims that mercy is weakness and orders Ned's execution. The decision is shocking, but it follows everything the series has shown about him. Joffrey wants the crowd to fear and admire him. He resents being controlled by his mother. Killing Ned allows him to display power in a way no advisor can reverse. Arya tries to reach her father, but Yoren grabs her and prevents her from seeing the final blow. Ned looks toward the place where he last saw Arya, apparently realizing that Yoren is protecting her. Then, Eileen Payne uses Ned's own greatsword to behead him. The apparent central hero of the series is gone before the first season ends. Ned's death isn't simply a twist designed to surprise the audience. It destroys the assumption that moral importance guarantees narrative protection. Ned made mistakes, but his punishment is far greater than those mistakes deserve. That imbalance tells us what kind of world this is. Justice is not automatic. Survival is not proof of virtue. A good person can lose because a cruel child changes his mind. The execution also creates the war Joffrey thinks it will prevent. Sansa becomes a prisoner forced to look at her father's severed head. Arya is disguised as a boy and hidden among recruits traveling north. Catelyn and Robb receive the news while surrounded by an army demanding action. Robb initially collapses in private. He is still a son grieving for his father. But when his lords debate whether to support Stannis or Renly, Greatjon rejects both southern claimants. The North once had its own kings. The northern lords kneel before Robb and proclaim him king in the north. It is an emotional act of defiance, but it also transforms a rescue campaign into a struggle for independence. Robb is now fighting not merely to punish the Lannisters, but to separate the North from the Iron Throne. At the Wall, Jon learns of Ned's imprisonment and later his death. Torn between his vows and his family, he rides away during the night intending to join Robb. Sam, Gren, and Pip follow him and remind him that the Watch has become his family too. Jon returns. His choice mirrors the conflict that destroyed Ned. Personal love pulls him one way, duty another. For now, Jon chooses duty, though the decision will never erase his connection to the Starks. Lord Commander Mormont soon leads the Night's Watch beyond the Wall. Benjen Stark remains missing, dead men have risen inside Castle Black, and stories of the White Walkers can no longer be dismissed as wildling superstition. While the kingdoms fight over Joffrey, Robb, Stannis, and Renly, the Watch moves toward the only war that may truly matter. In Essos, Daenerys suffers her own devastating collapse. An assassin's attempt on her life convinces Drogo to promise an invasion of Westeros. But before he can cross the sea, a wound becomes infected. Daenerys turns to Mirri Maz Duur, a healer whose people were attacked by the Dothraki. Mirri uses blood magic, warning that life can be purchased only with death. Daenerys accepts without understanding the full price. Her unborn child dies, and Drogo survives only as an empty body incapable of thought or command. Mirri reveals that the result was no accident. Daenerys believed she was saving the woman, But Miri saw only another member of the conquering force that destroyed her home. Daenerys ends Drogo's existence herself, then builds a funeral pyre. She binds Miri to it, places the 3 stone dragon eggs around Drogo's body, and walks into the flames. By morning, the fire has burned away. Daenerys remains alive. 3 newborn dragons cling to her body. For generations, dragons were considered extinct, and magic seemed to be fading from the world. Their return changes the balance of the entire story. Daenerys has lost her husband, her child, and most of her khalasar, but she emerges from the ashes with something no living ruler possesses. Season 1 ends with kingdoms dividing, armies marching, dead men rising, and dragons being born. The age of ordinary politics is already over. Westeros just hasn't realized it yet. The death of Robert Baratheon doesn't create one war for the throne. It creates several wars at once. Joffrey sits in King's Landing with House Lannister behind him. Stannis Baratheon claims the crown through legal inheritance. Renly Baratheon claims it through popularity and military strength. Robb Stark doesn't want the southern throne at all, but the northern lords have declared him their king. Across the sea, Daenerys Targaryen carries 3 dragons and the name of the dynasty Robert overthrew. 5 kings rise, but none of them sees the whole board. In the capital, Joffrey turns kingship into public cruelty. He orders tournaments staged for his amusement, humiliates petitioners, and punishes Sansa whenever Robb wins a battle. She survives by repeating the words expected of her, insisting that her father was a traitor and that Joffrey is her true king. Every sentence is a performance. Sansa once believed courtly manners were proof of goodness. Now those same manners become armor. Her courtesy hides terror, and her ability to say what dangerous people want to hear keeps her alive. Joffrey's position remains vulnerable because Robert's illegitimate children are living evidence that the royal family's blonde appearance is suspicious. The City Watch begins hunting them. Infants, children, and adults are killed throughout the capital, while Gendry remains beyond their reach among the Night's Watch recruits traveling north. The Purge confirms that Cersei understands the secret's danger, but it also shows that she can't fully control the son she protected. Joffrey possesses royal authority without discipline, and every violent command creates new enemies. Tywin sends Tyrion to King's Landing to serve as acting hand of the king. Cersei is furious. She sees the appointment as another attempt by their father to limit her authority. Tyrion sees a government drifting toward disaster under a vicious boy and advisors too frightened to restrain him. He enters the capital with Shae, despite his father ordering him not to bring her. Their relationship is affectionate, but it is built on an unstable foundation. Shae is a paid companion who wants recognition and security. Tyrion wants to believe she values him as a man rather than as a Lannister with money. Because the court would use her against him, Tyrion hides her as Sansa's handmaiden. He then begins identifying where power actually lies. Janos Slynt commands the City Watch and helped betray Ned. Tyrion rewards him with exile to the Night's Watch, replacing him with Bronn as commander. Grand Maester Pycelle pretends to be a harmless old servant, but secretly reports to Cersei. Tyrion exposes him by giving different versions of a marriage plan to separate members of the council and seeing which version reaches the queen. Pycelle is arrested, while Littlefinger and Varys learn that the new hand isn't as easy to manipulate as the previous one. Tyrion also sends Princess Myrcella to Dorne to marry into House Martell. The alliance may protect her from the conflict surrounding the capital and strengthen Joffrey's government. Cersei, however, experiences the decision as Tyrion stealing her daughter. Their conflict is political, but underneath it lies an old family wound. Cersei has spent her life blaming Tyrion for their mother's death during his birth. Tyrion knows she despises him, yet part of him still wants acknowledgement from his family. Both can recognize the intelligence of the other, but neither can stop turning that intelligence into a weapon. Outside the capital, Stannis Baratheon prepares his claim from Dragonstone. Stannis is Robert's elder surviving brother, and therefore the lawful heir once Joffrey's parentage is rejected. Yet legality alone hasn't made him loved. He is rigid, severe, and incapable of offering the warmth that inspires loyalty. His closest advisor is Davos Seaworth, a former smuggler whom Stannis knighted for bringing food through a siege during Robert's rebellion. Stannis also removed part of Davos's fingers as punishment for his past crimes. That contradiction captures Stannis perfectly. He rewards service and punishes wrongdoing in the same gesture, applying law even when mercy or political convenience would be easier. Beside him stands Melisandre, a priestess devoted to the Lord of Light. She believes Stannis is a chosen figure destined to fight the darkness. Under her influence, he burns symbols of the Seven, the dominant religion of Westeros, and draws a flaming sword from the fire. The display is designed to present him as a prophesied king, but it alienates people who might otherwise support his legal claim. Stannis sends declarations across the realm exposing Cersei's children as products of incest. The truth Ned died trying to reveal is now public, but because it comes from a rival claimant, many people dismiss it as propaganda. Truth has reached the kingdom. It still lacks the power to unite it. Renly, meanwhile, commands a much larger army. He has married Margaery Tyrell, whose family controls the wealth and food of the Reach. Her brother Loras was Renly's lover long before the marriage, and Margaery understands more about their relationship than Renly expects. She isn't shocked or naive. Her goal is to become queen, and she is willing to construct whatever public marriage makes that possible. Margaery's flexibility immediately distinguishes her from the rigid people competing around her. Renly has charm, powerful allies, and enormous military support. What he lacks is a lawful claim stronger than Stannis's. When Catelyn Stark arrives to negotiate an alliance, she finds two brothers more focused on insulting each other than on defeating their common enemy. Stannis demands that Renly submit. Renly points to the size of his army and refuses. Both believe the other should surrender because both define legitimacy differently. Stannis values law. Renly values acceptance. Neither is willing to compromise, even though cooperation could overwhelm the Lannisters. Robb Stark faces his own strategic pressures. His victories have made him respected, but they haven't freed Sansa, returned Arya, or defeated Tywin. He sends Theon Greyjoy to the Iron Islands, hoping Theon can persuade his father Balon to join the Northern cause. Catelyn warns Robb against trusting him. Theon grew up at Winterfell after Balon's failed rebellion. Ned treated him better than a prisoner, and Robb came to consider him a brother. But Theon has spent years divided between the family that raised him and the family whose name he carries. When he returns home, he expects to be welcomed as Balon Greyjoy's heir. Instead, his father mocks his northern clothing and accuses him of becoming loyal to the Starks. Theon also discovers that his sister Yara has earned the respect he assumed would belong to him. Balon has no interest in Robb's alliance. He plans to attack the north while its armies are fighting in the south. Theon now faces a choice between the people who trusted him and the father whose approval he has wanted since childhood. His tragedy begins with the belief that identity must be proven through betrayal. Arya's journey north also collapses. The royal soldiers searching for Gendry attack Yoren's group. Yoren is killed protecting the recruits. Arya frees 3 dangerous prisoners from a burning wagon, including a mysterious man named Jaqen H'ghar. She survives by claiming that a dead boy named Lamy was Gendry, then allows herself and the others to be taken prisoner. They are brought to Harrenhal, where captives are tortured for information and killed almost casually. Arya watches people disappear one by one, knowing that revealing her identity could make her valuable, but could also deliver her directly to the Lannisters. When Tywin arrives, he immediately recognizes that Arya is more educated than she pretends to be. He doesn't discover who she is, but he makes her his cupbearer. the daughter of Ned Stark, now serves the man directing the war against her brother. Their conversations become a quiet contest. Tywin notices her intelligence and occasionally appears amused by it. Arya studies him at close range, carrying hatred inside a servant's silence. Beyond the wall, Jon and the knights watch shelter at the home of Craster, a brutal wildling who marries his own daughters. His sons are never seen. Jon follows Craster into the forest and discovers the truth. Newborn boys are left outside as offerings, and something in the darkness comes to collect them. When Jon confronts Lord Commander Mormont, he learns that the Watch has tolerated Craster because his shelter and information help Rangers survive. Jon is horrified. Mormont understands that command sometimes means accepting a lesser evil to preserve men for a greater war. It is another lesson in the moral compromise that Jon once imagined the Watch would help him escape. In the Red Waste, Daenerys discovers that dragons don't immediately solve the problems of survival. Her followers are starving, her horses are dying, and the creatures themselves are still tiny and vulnerable. She sends riders in different directions seeking help. Most find nothing. One returns with an invitation from Qarth, a wealthy city protected by enormous walls. The rulers initially refuse to admit Daenerys unless she reveals her dragons. She refuses to perform for them. Xaro Daxos finally guarantees her safety, allowing her people inside. Qarth offers food, wealth, and dazzling promises, but Daenerys remains dependent on strangers whose interests she doesn't understand. She calls herself the Mother of Dragons and rightful Queen of Westeros, yet titles alone cannot purchase ships. Back in the Stormlands, the conflict between Stannis and Renly reaches what should be a decisive battle. Before it can begin, Davos secretly carries Melisandre beneath Renly's camp. There, she gives birth to a living shadow. That shadow enters Renly's tent while Catelyn and Brienne of Tarth are present. Brienne has recently earned a place in Renly's guard and genuinely loves him, not because she expects romance, but because he once treated her with kindness. She is standing beside him when the shadow takes Stannis's shape and kills him. The guards enter moments later and assume Brienne committed the murder. Catelyn convinces her to flee, understanding that no ordinary explanation will save them. Renly's immense army loses its king in seconds. Most of his forces transfer their allegiance to Stannis. The Tyrells withdraw, carrying their wealth and wounded ambition elsewhere. Stannis has removed his brother and gained much of his army, but the method of victory reveals what his claim is becoming. He began as the candidate of law. Now his path to the throne is being cleared by blood magic. Theon Greyjoy returns to the north with one ship, a small group of Ironborn, and a desperate need to prove that he belongs among them. His father's strategy is to attack lightly defended northern territory while Robb's main army remains in the south. Theon is assigned an unimportant coastal target, but he understands that following orders won't earn the admiration he wants. Yara already commands respect. If Theon is going to replace her in his father's eyes, he believes he needs a victory no one can ignore, so he targets Winterfell. The plan succeeds because it appears impossible. Theon attacks Torrhen's Square first, drawing Ser Rodrik Cassel and most of Winterfell's remaining defenders away. He then takes the nearly empty castle with only a few men. Bran wakes to discover that someone he once considered family has seized his home. Theon expects the people of Winterfell to acknowledge him as a conqueror. Instead, they see the frightened ward Ned Stark raised. He can occupy the castle, but he can't control what people believe about him. Ser Rodrik is captured and brought back before the new ruler. He refuses to submit and spits in Theon's face. Theon initially considers imprisonment, but his men tell him that weakness will destroy whatever authority he has gained. Theon sentences Rodrik to death. He has little experience with execution and repeatedly strikes the older man before finally killing him. The scene deliberately echoes Ned's execution of the deserter at the beginning of the series, but the difference is enormous. Ned carried out a difficult duty, with control and solemnity. Theon kills Roderick because he fears looking weak. He has taken Ned's castle while proving that he learned almost nothing from him. Bran formally yields Winterfell to protect its people, but Osha creates an opportunity to escape. She pretends to submit to Theon, distracts one of his guards, and leaves the castle with Bran, Rickon, Hodor, and the direwolves. When Theon discovers that the Stark boys are missing, his entire claim begins to collapse. If Bran and Rickon reach Robb, Theon becomes a temporary invader trapped far from the sea. His men search the countryside but find no trace of them. The boys have doubled back and hidden inside Winterfell's crypts. Theon cannot admit failure, so he manufactures success. He murders 2 orphaned farm boys, burns their bodies beyond recognition, and displays them as Bran and Rickon. The deception horrifies Maester Luwin and transforms Theon from a betrayer into someone willing to kill innocent children to preserve an image. Yet even this act fails to give him the respect he wanted. His soldiers obey him, but they don't admire him. The North fears what he has done, but fear is not the belonging he came home to find. Farther south, Arya remains trapped inside Harrenhal, serving Tywin Lannister while quietly listening to military information that could help Robb. Jaqen H'ghar approaches her with a strange offer. Because Arya saved him and 2 other prisoners from the burning wagon, he says 3 lives are owed to the god of death. She may name 3 people, and he will kill them. Arya tests the promise by naming the Tickler, one of Harrenhal's torturers. The man is soon found dead. Her second choice is Amory Lorch, who catches her carrying a message stolen from Tywin's chambers. Arya urgently gives Jaqen his name, and Amory collapses before he can expose her. Only then does Arya understand the scale of the power she has been given. She could have named Tywin. She could have named Joffrey. She could have tried to change the entire war. Instead, immediate danger controlled her choices, and 2 names are already gone. When Tywin leaves Harrenhal to confront Robb's forces, Arya realizes that waiting for rescue may leave her trapped permanently. She asks Jaqen to help her escape, but he reminds her that he owes only 1 death. Arya names Jaqen himself. The threat forces him to cooperate. Jaqen arranges for the guards to be killed, allowing Arya, Gendry, and Hot Pie to walk out of Harrenhal. Before leaving, he offers to take Arya to Braavos and train her in his mysterious art. She refuses because she still wants to find her family. Jaqen gives her an iron coin and tells her that if she ever needs to find him, she should give the coin to a person from Braavos and say 2 words, Valar Morghulis. Then he changes his face. Arya has already seen dragons and heard stories of walking corpses, but this encounter introduces a quieter form of magic. Identity itself can be removed, borrowed, and turned into a weapon. In Robb's camp, victory is producing dangers that defeat never could. Robb meets Talisa, a healer treating wounded soldiers from both sides. She challenges his romantic ideas about war by forcing him to look directly at the ordinary people losing limbs and families because kings are competing for power. Their attraction grows even though Robb is promised to a daughter of Walder Frey. At the same time, Jaime Lannister attempts to escape captivity. He kills a young Lannister relative and murders Torrhen Karstark before being recaptured. Lord Rickard Karstark demands revenge, but Jaime is too valuable to execute. Catelyn fears that angry northern soldiers will kill him anyway, destroying the best chance of recovering Sansa and Arya. Acting without Robb's permission, she releases Jaime into Brienne's custody and sends them toward King's Landing to exchange him for her daughters. The decision comes from a mother's desperation, but it damages Robb's authority. His most valuable prisoner is gone, his bannermen feel betrayed, and his mother has openly ignored his command. Robb then makes his own emotionally driven choice. He tells Talisa that he doesn't want to marry a woman he has never met. They sleep together, and Robb marries her, breaking his agreement with House Frey. The relationship is sincere. The political consequences will be catastrophic. Beyond the Wall, Jon travels with the legendary ranger Qhorin Halfhand. Their group encounters wildlings, and Jon captures a young woman named Ygritte. Qhorin orders him to kill her before continuing the mission. Jon raises his sword but cannot strike. His hesitation gives Ygritte time to escape, and Jon becomes separated from the other rangers while recapturing her. She mocks his vows, questions everything the Watch has taught him about wildlings, and exposes how little Jon understands about the people living beyond the wall. Jon believes they are enemies of the realm. Ygritte sees Southerners who built a wall and then claimed everyone on the other side was less human. She eventually leads him into an ambush. Jon and Qhorin are captured and taken toward the wildling leader, Mance Rayder. Qhorin quietly tells Jon that the Watch needs someone inside the enemy's army. He then begins attacking and insulting Jon in front of their captors, creating the appearance that Jon is willing to betray the Watch. Their fight becomes real enough that Jon has no safe way to stop it. Jon kills Qhorin. The wildlings now believe he has broken with his brothers, but Jon knows that Qhorin sacrificed himself to place a spy inside Mance Rayder's camp. It is the darkest lesson Jon has received about duty. Sometimes loyalty must look exactly like betrayal. In King's Landing, Stannis Baratheon's fleet finally enters Blackwater Bay. Tyrion has prepared the city with the limited resources available to him. He gathers every container of wildfire he can find and places much of it aboard a single empty ship. When Stannis' fleet surrounds it, Bronn fires a flaming arrow into the bay. The wildfire explodes. Green fire tears through ships, soldiers, and water itself. The destruction is enormous, but Stannis refuses to retreat. He lands his remaining forces and personally climbs the walls, fighting closer to the front than Joffrey ever would. Inside the Red Keep, Cersei waits with the noblewomen and children. She drinks heavily while explaining to Sansa what will happen if the city falls. Cersei's bitterness is cruel, but it also reveals the fear underneath her authority. She knows defeat would expose her and her children to vengeance. On the walls, Joffrey abandons his men after Cersei orders him back to safety. His departure nearly breaks the defenders' morale. Tyrion takes command. He leads a counterattack through tunnels and strikes Stannis' forces from behind. For the first time, the man his family dismisses becomes the person holding their capital together. The Hound refuses to continue fighting amid the flames. Fire recalls the childhood trauma caused by his brother Gregor, and no threat from Joffrey can force him back into the battle. He leaves the city and offers to take Sansa north, but she is too frightened to trust him. During the fighting, a member of the Kingsguard attacks Tyrion. Podrick Payne kills the knight and saves him, but Tyrion falls unconscious, uncertain whether the city has survived. Stannis' men appear close to victory when another army arrives. Tywin Lannister enters the throne room after joining forces with House Tyrell. Loras Tyrell rides in wearing Renly's armor, frightening soldiers who believe the dead king has returned. Stannis' army collapses, and he is dragged away from the battlefield. Tyrion saved the city long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Tywin receives the public credit. When Tyrion wakes, he has lost his position as Hand, his rooms, and nearly all political influence. The family he protected has already begun erasing his contribution. In Qarth, Daenerys discovers that her dragons have been stolen. The warlock Pyat Pri has allied with Xaro Shoan Daxos, who declares himself king after the other leaders of the city are murdered. Daenerys enters the House of the Undying to recover her children. Inside, she sees visions of a ruined throne room covered in snow and a life with Drogo and the son she lost. The visions offer comfort, power, and escape. She turns away from them. When Pyat chains her and explains that the dragons strengthen his magic, Daenerys commands them to breathe fire. The warlock burns, and the chains fall away. She later discovers that Xaro's supposedly impenetrable vault is empty. His great wealth was another performance. Daenerys seals Xaro, and the servant who betrayed her inside it then takes enough valuables to purchase a ship. At Winterfell, the Ironborn knock Theon unconscious and abandon the castle before northern forces arrive. Bran and the others emerge from the crypts to find Winterfell burned and Maester Luwin dying beneath the Heart Tree. He tells Osha that Bran and Rickon must separate because together they are easier to find. The Stark family is now scattered across the world, and its ancestral home lies in ruins. Then, beyond the wall, Sam hears 3 blasts of a horn. 3 blasts mean White Walkers. An army of dead men marches through the snow, led by creatures Westeros still considers mythical. The kings have spent an entire season fighting for the realm. None of them has noticed that the realm is about to be invaded by death. The surviving members of the Night's Watch retreat from the Fist of the First Men with the army of the dead behind them. They entered the wilderness searching for wildlings. They return knowing that the oldest stories were warnings. Samwell Tarly falls behind during the march, exhausted and ashamed. He believes he failed to send the ravens that could have warned Castle Black. Lord Commander Mormont refuses to let him surrender, ordering the other brothers to make sure Sam returns alive. The watch reaches Craster's Keep, where hunger and fear turn discipline into resentment. Craster has food, but he insults the exhausted men and reminds them that the watch has tolerated his abuse for years because it needed his shelter. When Craster refuses to share more supplies, one starving ranger challenges him. The confrontation becomes murder. Craster is killed and Mormont dies trying to stop the mutiny. The Lord Commander survives White Walkers, wildling territory, and the collapse of the Ranging only to be killed by his own men. Sam escapes with Gilly and her newborn son. He knows what Craster did with his boys, and he understands that leaving the child behind would be a death sentence. Their journey south brings them face to face with a White Walker. Sam is terrified, but when the creature reaches for Gilly's child, he attacks it with a dagger made from dragon glass. The weapon shatters the White Walker. For thousands of years, the knowledge that obsidian could kill these beings has been buried beneath legend. Sam discovers it almost by accident, but the moment proves that the enemy isn't invincible. The question is whether anyone in the South will care before it is too late. Jon Snow is brought before Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall. Mance once served in the Night's Watch, but he abandoned it after recognizing that the wildlings were not a single enemy tribe. They were many communities trying to survive the approaching dead. Mance united them by convincing them that their old rivalries mattered less than what was coming. Jon claims he wants to join because he saw Craster sacrificing his sons while the Watch did nothing. The explanation is convincing because the anger behind it is real. Mance accepts him, but trust must be proven. Jon travels with Ygritte and a wildling group commanded by Tormund Giantsbane. They plan to climb the wall, attack Castle Black from the southern side, and open the way for Mance's army. Ygritte continues challenging Jon's understanding of loyalty, freedom, and history. She knows he is hiding something, but their attraction grows stronger than her suspicion. Inside a cave, away from armies and vows, Jon temporarily allows himself to imagine another life. But the wall is waiting. The climb nearly kills them when the ice breaks beneath the group. Jon saves Ygritte, strengthening a bond that is already becoming impossible to separate from his mission. Once south of the wall, Jon refuses to kill an innocent farmer. The wildlings realize he has remained loyal to the Watch. Jon escapes after fighting them, but Ygritte follows him. She finds him near an abandoned windmill and shoots him with several arrows as he rides away. Her aim is good enough to hit him, but perhaps not meant to kill him. Anger and love exist in the same release of the bowstring. Jon reaches Castle Black wounded, carrying knowledge of the invasion approaching from both sides. Farther south, Bran Stark begins understanding that his strange dreams are more than dreams. Jojen and Mira Reed find Bran's group on the road. Jojen explains that Bran is a warg, someone capable of entering the mind of an animal. Bran's connection with Summer is only the beginning. His visions of the three-eyed raven are drawing him north for a reason. Bran can also enter Hodor's mind, though doing so crosses a much more troubling boundary. An animal follows instinct. Hodor is a person, even if he cannot clearly express his resistance. Bran's power offers freedom from his broken body, but it also carries the temptation to control another living being. At the ruins of a tower, Bran's path crosses close to Jon's without either brother knowing the other is nearby. Bran hears Jon fighting the wildlings and wants to reveal himself, but Jojen insists that their mission lies farther north. The Stark children are separated by only a short distance, yet the forces moving them through the story keep pulling them apart. Arya travels through the Riverlands with Gendry and Hot Pie until they are captured by the Brotherhood without banners. The Brotherhood claims to protect common people from both Lannister and Stark soldiers. Its leader, Beric Dondarrion, is the man Ned once sent to arrest Gregor Clegane. Beric has died repeatedly. Each time the Red Priest Thoros of Myre has called upon the Lord of Light and brought him back, though Beric returns with less of himself. His resurrection shows that Melisandre's faith is connected to something real, even if no one fully understands its purpose. The Brotherhood captures the Hound and places him on trial for his crimes. Arya accuses him of murdering Micah, but Beric fights him in trial by combat and loses. Thoros resurrects Beric again, while the Hound is released according to the Brotherhood's law. Arya is furious that Ritual has protected someone she knows is guilty. Then, the Brotherhood sells Gendry to Melisandre in exchange for gold. Gendry is Robert Baratheon's son, and Melisandre believes royal blood can strengthen her magic. Arya sees another group claiming to serve justice while trading away her friend when it becomes useful. She escapes, only to be captured by the Hound. Unlike the others, he doesn't pretend to be virtuous. He plans to take Arya to her family and demand payment. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys arrives in Astapor, where slave masters train the Unsullied. The Unsullied are soldiers stripped of individuality through years of cruelty. They are taught to obey any command, feel no fear, and treat death as irrelevant. Daenerys pretends she needs to purchase them to build an army. The Master Krasnys insults her in Valyrian, assuming she cannot understand the language. Through a translator named Missandei, he explains the methods used to break the soldiers. Daenerys offers one of her dragons in exchange for every unsullied warrior in the city. Ser Jorah and Ser Barristan Selmy fear she is surrendering her greatest advantage. Barristan has recently revealed himself after saving Daenerys from an assassin. Once a legendary member of the Kingsguard, he served her father and later Robert, but now wants to serve the last Targaryen. The exchange takes place before thousands of Unsullied. Daenerys hands Drogon's chain to Krasnys and receives the command whip. Then she turns to the soldiers and speaks fluent Valyrian. Krasnys finally understands that she heard every insult. Daenerys orders the Unsullied to kill the slave masters and free every enslaved person in Astapor. She commands Drogon to burn Krasnys, reminding everyone that a dragon is not a slave. When the city has fallen, she gives the Unsullied a genuine choice. They may leave as free men or follow her voluntarily. They choose to follow. Their elected commander is Grey Worm, whose name was assigned by the Masters. Daenerys tells the soldiers they may choose new names, but Grey Worm keeps his because it was the name he carried on the day he became free. Daenerys leaves Astapor with an army, but her conquest also begins a pattern that will define her future. She enters a cruel system, destroys its rulers with overwhelming force, and promises liberation. The immediate victory is undeniable. What happens after she leaves is far more difficult. She moves toward Yunkai, another slave city. There she meets Daario Naharis, a commander hired to fight against her. Daario kills his fellow captains and offers his loyalty to Daenerys instead. With Daario, Jorah, Grey Worm, and the Unsullied, Daenerys takes Yunkai and frees its enslaved population. The people emerge calling her Mahaisa, meaning mother. She walks among them as they lift her into the air. The image is triumphant, but it introduces another danger. Daenerys is no longer merely gaining followers. She is becoming the center of a belief system in which conquest and salvation are beginning to look like the same thing. In Westeros, Jaime and Brienne are captured by soldiers serving Roose Bolton. Their leader, Locke, understands that Jaime's family name makes him valuable, but despises his arrogance. Jaime tries to talk his way through the situation, as he has done throughout his life. Locke cuts off his sword hand. The loss destroys the identity Jaime has built since childhood. His reputation, confidence, and usefulness all depended on being one of the greatest swordsmen alive. Without his right hand, he believes he has become the helpless figure other people always feared becoming. Brienne refuses to let him surrender. Later, in the baths at Harrenhal, Jaime finally explains why he killed the Mad King. Aerys Targaryen had ordered wildfire placed beneath King's Landing and intended to burn the city rather than lose it. Jaime killed the pyromancer and then the king, saving countless lives. Ned Stark entered afterward and found Jaime sitting beside the throne. Jaime never explained. He assumed Ned had already judged him, then turned that judgment into the cynical Kingslayer identity he carried for years. Brienne sees that the most dishonorable act of Jaime's life may also have been his most heroic. When Jaime is sent to King's Landing, he discovers that Brienne has been left behind. He turns back, finding her trapped in a bear pit for the entertainment of Locke's men. Jaime jumps into the pit despite having only one hand. Together, they survive and force their way out. The man who pushed Bran from a tower is still capable of monstrous choices. But Brienne has awakened a part of him that wants to become the knight he once imagined he could be. Robb Stark's position is moving in the opposite direction. Rickard Karstark murders young Lannister prisoners in revenge for his sons. Robb knows Karstark's soldiers are essential to the war, but he cannot allow the murder to pass unpunished. Catelyn urges restraint. Talisa asks him to consider the lives that will be lost if the Karstarks abandon the campaign. Robb executes Rickard anyway. Like Ned, he chooses justice even when justice weakens his political position. The Karstark forces leave, and Robb's army becomes too small to defeat the Lannisters directly. He develops a new plan to attack Casterly Rock, but he needs Walder Frey's support. That means returning to the family whose marriage agreement he broke. Walder demands apologies, military concessions, and a replacement marriage. Catelyn's brother Edmure Tully must marry one of his daughters. Edmure reluctantly accepts. Meanwhile, Tywin strengthens the Lannister-Tyrell alliance through marriages of his own. Joffrey will marry Margaery, whose talent for winning public affection makes Cersei increasingly uneasy. Tyrion is ordered to marry Sansa, securing the Lannisters' claim to the north if Robb dies. Cersei is ordered to marry Loras Tyrell, preventing either child of Tywin from refusing their assigned role. Tyrion does not force Sansa to consummate their marriage, but his restraint cannot make the situation kind. Sansa is still a prisoner, compelled to marry a member of the family that killed her father. The kingdom is being reorganized through chains disguised as wedding vows. At the twins, another wedding is prepared. Robb apologizes to Walder Frey. Edmure meets his bride and is relieved to find her beautiful. Music fills the hall, food is served, and the Freys appear ready to restore the alliance. Catelyn remains uneasy. She knows Walder Frey has spent his life collecting insults and waiting for chances to repay them. Then the musicians begin playing The Rains of Castamere, the song celebrating Tywin Lannister's destruction of a rebellious house. The doors of the hall close. Roose Bolton's men put on armor beneath their clothing, and Catelyn realizes, one moment too late, that this wedding was never meant to repair a broken promise. The Red Wedding begins with the appearance of peace. Edmure Tully has been taken away for the traditional bedding ceremony. Robb and Talisa speak quietly about their unborn child. Catelyn watches Walder Frey's expression, still searching for the danger she can feel but cannot yet identify. Then the doors are locked. The musicians change their song. Catelyn looks beneath Roose Bolton's sleeve and discovers armor. The first crossbow bolts strike Robb's men before they can draw their weapons. Talisa is stabbed repeatedly in the stomach, destroying both her and the future Robb believed he was building. Robb is wounded, while northern soldiers are slaughtered throughout the hall and across the Frey camp. Outside, Arya and the Hound arrive at the twins only moments from reaching her family. For years, Arya has traveled toward home. Each time she approaches someone she loves, the war moves them farther away. Now she is close enough to see Stark soldiers celebrating, unaware that the feast has become an execution. When the killing begins, the Hound understands before Arya does. He prevents her from entering the hall and carries her away as the northern camp collapses. Inside, Catelyn seizes Walder Frey's young wife and threatens to kill her unless Robb is released. Walder is unmoved. His family has been insulted for generations, and tonight he believes he is finally forcing the great houses to respect him. Robb looks toward his mother, unable to save Talisa, his child, his army, or himself. Roose Bolton approaches him. As he drives a blade into Robb's heart, he tells him that the Lannisters send their regards. Catelyn kills Walder's wife, but the act contains no hope of escape. Her grief has gone beyond strategy, survival, or vengeance. A Frey soldier cuts her throat. House Stark's rebellion appears to end in a single night. The massacre violates one of Westeros's oldest protections, guest right. Once a host has offered bread and salt, a guest is supposed to be safe beneath that roof. Walder Frey's betrayal, therefore, damages more than the Stark army. It shows that even the customs separating civilization from murder can be discarded when powerful men find betrayal useful. Tywin Lannister never enters the hall, but the victory belongs to him. He understands that wars are won by destroying alliances, exploiting wounded pride, and making other people perform the bloodiest work. Walder Frey receives revenge. Roose Bolton receives authority over the North. Tywin removes Robb without risking another battlefield defeat. When Tyrion condemns the murder, Tywin argues that killing a few people during dinner is less destructive than killing thousands in open war. The reasoning is cold and efficient, but it hides the true cost. The Red Wedding doesn't create peace. It creates a political order based on terror, resentment, and partnerships between people who cannot trust one another. Roose's betrayal also reveals what happened at Winterfell. His illegitimate son Ramsay captured Theon after the Ironborn abandoned him. Ramsay has been torturing Theon physically and psychologically, removing parts of his body and destroying his sense of identity. He gives him the name Reek and punishes every attempt to remember that he was once Theon Greyjoy. Theon wanted to prove that he belonged to the Ironborn by betraying the Starks. Ramsay now strips away both identities, leaving him belonging nowhere. Roose is rewarded with the title Warden of the North, but northern loyalty cannot be granted by a southern king. The Boltons possess Winterfell's territory without possessing the love attached to the Stark name. Arya witnesses Frey soldiers parading Robb's mutilated body with Grey Wind's head attached to it. The Hound again prevents her from rushing towards certain death. Something changes inside her. Arya once repeated the names of people she wanted to kill as a way of controlling her fear. After the Red Wedding, the list becomes closer to a personal religion. Justice has failed too many times for her to expect anyone else to provide it. Elsewhere, Stannis receives news of Robb's death after Melisandre used blood taken from Gendry and named 3 kings before the flames: Robb Stark, Joffrey Baratheon, and Balon Greyjoy. 2 remain alive, but Robb's death strengthens her influence. Davos discovers that Melisandre intends to sacrifice Gendry completely. He frees the young man and places him in a boat before he can be burned. Stannis considers executing Davos for treason, but Davos has recently learned to read and brings him a message from the Night's Watch. The message warns of the threat beyond the wall. Davos argues that a king who cannot protect the realm does not deserve to rule it. For the first time, Stannis is forced to consider that the war for the throne may not be the most important conflict facing Westeros. At Castle Black, Jon recovers from Ygritte's arrows. He warns the Watch that Mance Rayder has united a vast wildling army and intends to attack the Wall. But the Watch has lost men beyond the Wall, suffered a mutiny, and received little help from the kingdoms it protects. Westeros is too consumed by civil war to defend its northern boundary. Bran's group reaches the Wall and passes through with Sam's help. Sam recognizes that Bran is Jon's brother, but honors his request not to reveal that he survived. Bran's visions are drawing him toward the three-eyed raven, and returning south would abandon the mission before he understands it. Sam gives them dragon glass weapons. The smallest and least respected member of the Watch now carries knowledge that could determine whether humanity survives. In King's Landing, the Lannisters prepare for another royal wedding. Joffrey will marry Margaery Tyrell, joining the throne to the family whose food, wealth, and soldiers saved the capital. Margaery presents herself as charitable, graceful, and interested in Joffrey's passions. She understands that he enjoys cruelty and carefully manages him without openly challenging him. Cersei recognizes the performance because she has spent years using similar methods. She sees Margaery winning the people and influencing Joffrey, and her fear of the younger queen becomes immediate. A new visitor also arrives for the wedding. Prince Oberyn Martell of Dorne comes in place of his elder brother. Oberyn is intelligent, direct, and openly contemptuous of the Lannisters. He has not forgotten that during the fall of King's Landing, Gregor Clegane murdered his sister Elia and her children. He believes Tywin gave the order. Oberyn has come to celebrate a marriage, but he is also seeking confession and revenge. Jaime finally returns to the capital without his sword hand. He expects Cersei to welcome him, yet she reacts with distance. The identity he carried as her fearless protector has been damaged, and Jaime begins seeing that their bond may depend on an image neither of them can maintain. Tywin gives Jaime a Valyrian steel sword forged from Ned Stark's enormous blade, Ice. The Stark weapon has been melted down, its identity erased and divided into Lannister property. Jaime gives one of the new swords to Brienne. He asks her to find Sansa and protect her, fulfilling the oath they both made to Catelyn. Brienne names the sword Oathkeeper. The gesture shows how deeply her example has affected him. Jaime cannot undo what he did to Bran or restore the honor he lost, but he can choose what kind of knight he becomes next. Joffrey's wedding begins as an enormous display of royal power. Performers entertain the court. Food covers the tables. The families responsible for the war sit together as though the realm has finally been stabilized. Joffrey uses the celebration to humiliate Tyrion. He destroys the book Tyrion gives him, pours wine over his uncle, and stages a cruel performance mocking the defeated kings. Tyrion tries to absorb the abuse, but he eventually refuses to kneel. Joffrey commands him to serve as cupbearer. Then the king begins choking. At first, the guests assume he is laughing or struggling with food. Within moments, his face changes, he collapses, and blood runs from his nose. Cersei holds him while he reaches outward, apparently pointing toward Tyrion. Joffrey dies on the floor of his own wedding. The boy who ordered Ned Stark's execution, tortured Sansa, and treated kingship as permission for cruelty is gone, yet his death doesn't end the system that protected him. Cersei immediately orders Tyrion's arrest. Sansa is led away by the former knight Dontos Hollard, who takes her to a ship hidden in the fog. Waiting aboard is Littlefinger. He arranged her escape. He also arranged the murder. The necklace Dontos gave Sansa contained a poison concealed among its stones. Olenna Tyrell removed the poison during the wedding, unwilling to let Margaery spend her life married to a monster she could not safely control. Littlefinger created the plan. Olenna delivered the poison, Sansa carried it unknowingly, and Tyrion was positioned to receive the blame. Chaos has not merely appeared. Littlefinger has manufactured it. Tyrion is placed on trial before Tywin, Mace Tyrell, and Oberyn Martell. Witness after witness reshapes his words and past actions into evidence of guilt. Even moments when Tyrion protected the city are presented as signs of hostility toward Joffrey. Then Shae enters the courtroom. Tyrion had forced her to leave by speaking cruelly, hoping that rejection would protect her from Tywin and Cersei. She interpreted his words as genuine betrayal. Now she describes their private life publicly and claims Tyrion conspired with Sansa to murder the king. The testimony breaks something in him. Tyrion has spent his life using intelligence and humor to survive his family's contempt. During the trial, he finally stops asking them to recognize his worth. He admits that he hated Joffrey, but denies killing him. He condemns the crowd he helped save and refuses Tywin's carefully prepared offer of mercy. Then he demands a trial by combat. Cersei chooses Gregor Clegane as the crown's champion. Tyrion appears to have challenged the strongest and most violent man in Westeros, with no one willing to stand for him. Then Oberyn Martell visits his cell. The man Tyrion is accused of murdering is not Oberyn's true concern. The opponent waiting in the arena is the man who killed his sister. Oberyn agrees to become Tyrion's champion. The trial for Joffrey's death is about to become a trial for crimes the Lannisters believed history had buried. Oberyn Martell enters the arena facing a man built like a fortress. Gregor Clegane wears heavy armor and carries a massive sword. Oberyn carries a spear, moves quickly, and keeps his distance. He isn't trying only to win Tyrion's freedom. He wants the Mountain to confess that he murdered Elia Martell and her children under Tywin Lannister's orders. At first, Oberyn's confidence appears justified. He circles Gregor, strikes between the gaps in his armor, and gradually weakens him. The Mountain falls, and Oberyn seems to have achieved the impossible. But victory isn't enough. Instead of finishing Gregor, Oberyn continues demanding a confession. His need for truth brings him too close. Gregor knocks him down, grabs him, and finally admits murdering Elia before crushing Oberyn's skull. Tyrion is condemned to death. Oberyn's defeat repeats one of the series' harshest patterns. A character can be morally right, more skillful, and moments away from justice, yet lose because the desire for emotional satisfaction becomes stronger than the instinct to survive. Oberyn wanted the person responsible for his sister's death to say her name. The confession comes at the exact moment it can no longer help him. Far to the north, the wildling assault on the wall begins. Mance Rayder's army attacks from beyond the wall, while Tormund, Ygritte, and the southern raiding party strike Castle Black from behind. The Night's Watch is badly outnumbered, and its acting commander, Eliezer Thorne, has spent years mocking Jon while ignoring many of his warnings. Yet when the attack arrives, personal hatred becomes secondary. Thorne fights bravely on the ground. Jon takes command above and below the wall. Grenn leads a small group into the tunnel beneath the gate where a giant is forcing its way through. Knowing they cannot retreat, Grenn and the others recite the words of the Night's Watch together. They hold the gate. None of them survives. Sam, who once believed courage belonged to people unlike him, moves through the battle protecting Gilly and carrying messages under fire. He cannot become the warrior his father wanted, but he repeatedly acts despite being terrified. Jon kills the wildling leader Styr and then comes face to face with Ygritte. For a moment, the battle around them disappears. She aims her bow, but hesitates. Before either can decide what happens next, Ollie, a boy whose family was killed by wildlings, shoots her. Ygritte dies in Jon's arms. Their relationship could never escape the war surrounding it. Jon loved her but betrayed her people. Ygritte loved him but attacked his home. Both imagined a cave where duty and history could be forgotten, but neither could remain there. The Watch survives the first assault, though another attack will destroy it. Jon walks alone into Mance's camp, planning to assassinate him even if it means his own death. Mance explains that his people aren't trying to conquer the Seven Kingdoms. They are trying to pass through the wall before the army of the dead reaches them. Before Jon can act, cavalry suddenly attacks the wildling camp. Stannis Baratheon has answered the Night's Watch's call. His arrival proves that Davos was right. Whatever Stannis's faults, he is the only claimant who temporarily places defense of the realm above immediate control of the throne. His army defeats the wildlings, and Mance is taken prisoner. Jon burns Ygritte's body beyond the wall. The fire closes one part of his life while making the next responsibility impossible to avoid. Bran's journey also reaches its destination. North of the wall, his group is attacked by undead wights near a great weirwood tree. Jojen Reed is killed, fulfilling the terrible certainty with which he always viewed his own future. Bran, Mira, Hodor, and Summer are rescued by one of the mysterious children of the forest and led into a hidden cave. There, surrounded by roots, Bran meets the ancient figure from his visions. The three-eyed raven tells him that he will never walk again, but he will fly. Bran has crossed the world searching for a cure to his broken body. What he finds instead is a power connected to memory, time, animals, and the history buried beneath Westeros. His story is no longer about returning to the life he lost. It is about becoming something no ordinary ruler understands. In the Vale, Littlefinger strengthens his control over Sansa. Lysa Arryn reveals that she poisoned her husband Jon at Littlefinger's request and sent the message blaming the Lannisters. The accusation that helped begin the conflict between Stark and Lannister was manufactured from the start. Littlefinger didn't merely exploit the chaos following Jon Arryn's death. He helped create it. When Lysa becomes jealous of Sansa and threatens to throw her through the moon door, Littlefinger intervenes. He assures Lysa that he loved only one woman, then reveals that the woman was Catelyn. He pushes Lysa to her death. Sansa lies to the Lords of the Vale, supporting Littlefinger's false account. It is the first time she knowingly participates in one of his deceptions. She has learned that truth alone will not protect her, but learning from Littlefinger means entering the world that destroyed her family. Nearby, Brienne and Podrick finally encounter Arya and the Hound. Brienne explains that she swore to protect Catelyn Stark's daughters. The Hound distrusts anyone carrying a Lannister sword, and Arya refuses to confirm her identity. Brienne and the Hound fight. Their battle isn't between a hero and a villain. Both have protected Arya in different ways, and both believe the other represents a threat. Brienne wins, knocking the Hound down a rocky slope. Arya later finds him badly wounded. He asks her to kill him. He tries insulting and provoking her, hoping she will give him the mercy of a quick death. Arya takes his money and leaves him behind. She reaches a port and asks a ship's captain to take her north. When he refuses but says the ship is returning to Braavos, she shows him Jaqen H'ghar's coin and speaks the words she was taught. Valar Morghulis. Arya sails east, leaving Westeros and the remaining pieces of her childhood behind. Tyrion is also preparing to disappear. Jaime frees him before his execution, but Tyrion doesn't go directly to Varys and the waiting ship. He enters the Hand's chambers and finds Shae in Tywin's bed. Whatever combination of anger, fear, and survival brought her there, Tyrion sees only the two people who wounded him most deeply joined together. Shae attacks him, and Tyrion strangles her with the chain around her neck. He then finds Tywin seated in the privy. Tywin attempts to restore control through words. He claims Tyrion was never truly going to be executed and repeatedly dismisses Shae with the same insult that has haunted Tyrion's life. Tyrion fires a crossbow. Tywin Lannister, the man who controlled kingdoms through fear and family reputation, dies alone at the hands of the son he spent decades humiliating. Varys places Tyrion aboard a ship and hears the bells announcing Tywin's death. Understanding that his own position is no longer safe, he joins Tyrion and leaves King's Landing. Tywin's death creates a vacuum no surviving Lannister can fully fill. Tommen becomes king, a gentler boy than Joffrey, but one easily controlled by stronger personalities. Margaery begins influencing him, while Cersei sees the Tyrells closing around her family. A childhood memory deepens her fear. A fortune teller once predicted that Cersei would become queen, lose her children, and eventually be replaced by someone younger and more beautiful. Cersei has spent much of her life trying to prevent that future. Her attempts to defeat the prophecy repeatedly help move her toward it. She empowers a growing religious movement led by the High Sparrow, believing the faith militant can be used against the Tyrells. Loras is arrested for his relationships with men, and Margaery is imprisoned after denying knowledge of them. But religious zeal cannot be controlled like a royal guard. Cersei's cousin Lancel has joined the movement and confessed their past relationship. The faith arrests Cersei as well, turning the weapon she created directly against her. In Essos, Tyrion travels with Varys, who believes Daenerys may be capable of building a better government than the rulers of Westeros. Tyrion is bitter, drunk, and uncertain that any ruler deserves his service. Their journey is interrupted when Jorah kidnaps Tyrion, hoping to deliver him to Daenerys and regain her trust. Jorah's desperation has grown since Daenerys learned that he originally entered her service as an informer for Robert Baratheon. Although he eventually became loyal to her, he concealed the truth until it was exposed by others. Daenerys banished him. Now he brings her the most politically intelligent Lannister alive. In Meereen, Daenerys discovers that conquest was easier than government. The Sons of the Harpy, masked insurgents supported by the Old Order, murder freed people and attack her soldiers. A former slave kills a captured Harpy before a lawful trial can take place. Daenerys executes him publicly. Believing equal justice requires punishing an ally who ignored her authority. The crowd that once called her mother turns against her. Barristan Selmy is later killed fighting the insurgents, removing one of the few advisors willing to challenge Daenerys without seeking personal advantage. To restore stability, she agrees to marry the noble Hizdahr zo Loraq and reopens the fighting pits she once condemned. Every compromise moves her farther from the pure image of liberation that brought her into the city. At the Wall, Jon is elected Lord Commander. His first challenge comes from Janos Slynt, who refuses a direct order because he assumes Jon lacks the will to punish him. Jon sentences him to death and personally carries out the execution. For a moment, Jon looks exactly like Ned Stark, but Jon's most important decision is far more controversial. He understands that the wildlings beyond the Wall will either become allies of the living or soldiers in the army of the dead. He plans to bring them south. Many members of the Watch see only generations of violence and murdered families. Jon sees the enemy that killed and resurrected thousands at the fist of the first men. He is preparing to make the correct strategic choice, and like Ned before him, he is underestimating how many people beside him would rather destroy their own leader than accept an unbearable truth. Littlefinger takes Sansa away from the Vale and brings her to Winterfell. His plan is to marry her to Ramsay Bolton, allowing the Boltons to strengthen their rule through the Stark name while placing Sansa in a position Littlefinger claims she can eventually use against them. For Sansa, returning home should mean safety. Instead, Winterfell has become a prison occupied by the family that betrayed Robb. Roose Bolton presents himself as controlled and practical. Ramsay is driven by humiliation, cruelty, and the need to prove that an illegitimate son can become a worthy heir. He forces Theon to serve as a reminder of what happens to anyone he breaks. Sansa recognizes Theon, but he is almost incapable of responding to his own name. Ramsay has conditioned him to betray anyone who asks for help. Their marriage gives the Boltons political legitimacy, while Sansa is subjected to abuse designed to destroy the remaining power of her identity. Yet Ramsay misunderstands what she has already survived. King's Landing taught her to hide emotion, observe weakness, and wait for opportunities. She bends because refusing would get her killed. She does not become loyal. Outside Winterfell, Stannis marches south, believing that defeating the Boltons will win northern support. Snow, hunger, and sabotage weaken his army. His wife and advisors grow desperate, while Melisandre insists that royal blood must be sacrificed to change their fate. the blood belongs to Stannis' daughter, Shireen. Shireen loves her father despite his emotional distance. She teaches Davos to read and treats people with a kindness almost absent from the political world around her. Stannis chooses his crown over his child. He allows Melisandre to burn Shireen alive. The promised miracle never comes. Soldier's Desert, Stannis' wife, kills herself and Melisandre abandons the camp. The sacrifice that was supposed to secure his destiny destroys the final loyalty holding his army together. The Boltons defeat him easily. Wounded in the forest, Stannis is found by Brienne. She identifies herself as a member of Renly's Kingsguard and sentences Stannis for murdering his brother. The lawful claimant dies after violating every principle that once made his claim meaningful. Inside Winterfell, Sansa and Theon finally escape together, jumping from the castle wall into the snow. Theon's decision does not erase his crimes, but it is the first serious step toward reclaiming the person Ramsay tried to remove. Farther north, Jon attempts to rescue the wildlings trapped at Hardhome. He and Tormund arrive hoping to persuade them to pass through the wall. Many distrust Jon, but the argument ends when the dead attack. Hardhome becomes the moment when the true scale of the coming war is revealed. Whites flood through the settlement, killing people who rise seconds later as new soldiers. Jon fights a White Walker and discovers that his Valyrian steel sword can destroy it. He escapes with only part of the population. From the boats, Jon watches the Night King raise his arms. Every dead wieldling stands again. The victory belongs entirely to the enemy. Jon returns to Castle Black knowing he made the only defensible choice. Many members of the Watch see something else. He allowed generations of enemies through the wall, lost brothers during the mission, and appears willing to sacrifice the Watch for people they were trained to hate. Elizar Thorne and several conspirators lure Jon outside with the claim that information about Benjen Stark has arrived. They surround him. One after another, they stab their Lord Commander while declaring that they act for the Watch. The final knife is held by Ollie, the boy Jon tried to guide. Jon falls into the snow. At almost the same time, Cersei's attempt to control the faith ends in complete humiliation. Imprisoned by the High Sparrow, she confesses to part of her misconduct but denies the accusations that would carry the greatest punishment. To return to the Red Keep, she must walk naked through the streets while the city insults and attacks her. The walk strips away the public image she has spent her life defending. Yet it does not create repentance. It creates concentrated rage. When she reaches the palace, Qyburn introduces a silent, enormous member of the Kingsguard, the reanimated body of Gregor Clegane. Cersei has survived. Everyone who witnessed her humiliation has become a future target. In Dorne, Jaime's effort to recover Myrcella ends with another fulfillment of Cersei's prophecy. Myrcella reveals that she knows Jaime is her father and accepts him. Moments later, poison placed by Ellaria Sand kills her. Jaime finally receives love from his daughter at the exact moment she is taken away. Arya's training in Braavos has taught her to observe lies, change identities, and suppress personal desire. But she cannot surrender her list. She steals a face and kills Meryn Trant, avenging Syrio Forel and punishing a man whose cruelty she witnessed in King's Landing. Because the killing was personal and unauthorized, the faceless men take her sight. Arya learns to fight while blind, gradually recovering her abilities. When ordered to assassinate an actress named Lady Crane, she discovers that she cannot become a weapon without judgment. She saves the intended victim and is hunted by the waif. Arya eventually kills the waif in darkness and returns the stolen face to the House of Black and White. Jaqen declares that she has finally become no one. Arya rejects the conclusion. She is Arya Stark of Winterfell, and she is going home. Season 6 begins at Castle Black with Jon's body protected by Davos and a small group of loyal men. Melisandre has lost faith after Stannis' defeat, but Davos asks whether her magic can bring Jon back. She performs the ritual. For several moments, nothing happens. Then Jon opens his eyes. His resurrection doesn't return him unchanged. The certainty he once placed in duty has been broken by the people who murdered him. After executing Thorne, Ollie, and the other conspirators, Jon declares that his watch has ended. Death has released him from his vow. Sansa reaches Castle Black, and the reunion between the two supposed outsiders of the Stark family gives both a new purpose. Sansa knows Ramsay will never allow them to live peacefully. Jon is reluctant to fight another war until Ramsay sends a letter threatening everyone they love and announcing that Rickon Stark is his prisoner. The siblings gather a small northern army. Meanwhile, Bran trains beneath the weirwood tree, witnessing fragments of the past through the three-eyed raven. He sees his father as a child and discovers that history is not as simple as the stories people preserve. When Bran enters a vision alone, the Night King touches him. The mark destroys the magical protection around the cave. The dead attack, killing the three-eyed raven, Summer, and the children of the forest. Mira attempts to escape while Bran remains trapped inside visions of Winterfell's past. She begs Hodor to hold a door against the Whites. Through Bran's connection across time, the young Hodor hears the command in the past. Hold the door collapses into the only word he will speak for the rest of his life. Hodor's entire existence has been shaped by the moment of his death. The revelation exposes the frightening reach of Bran's power. He cannot merely watch the past. Under certain conditions, he can affect it. Bran and Mira survive with help from Benjen Stark, who was attacked by a White Walker but saved from full transformation by the children. Bran later completes a vision of the Tower of Joy. Young Ned Stark finds his dying sister Lyanna with a newborn child. She makes him promise to protect the baby from Robert Baratheon, who would kill any surviving Targaryen heir. The child grows into Jon Snow. Jon is not Ned's illegitimate son. He is the son of Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen. Ned accepted years of dishonor to protect his sister's child. In Meereen, Tyrion tries to maintain peace while Daenerys is absent. Drogon carried her away from the fighting pits, after which a Dothraki Khalasar captured her and brought her to Vaes Dothrak. The gathered Khals intend to decide her future. Daenerys locks them inside their temple and sets it on fire. The Khals burn, but she walks out unharmed. The entire Dothraki population kneels before her. She returns to Meereen with a new army and destroys the fleet attacking the city. Tyrion negotiates alliances, while Yara and Theon Greyjoy arrive offering ships in exchange for Daenerys' support against their uncle Euron. Daenerys names Tyrion Hand of the Queen. In the north, Jon's army faces Ramsay outside Winterfell. Ramsay releases Rickon and tells him to run toward Jon, then fires arrows after him. Jon races forward, but Rickon is killed just before he can be reached. Jon charges alone. His emotional reaction ruins the battle plan and draws his forces into Ramsay's trap. The Bolton army surrounds them with shields, compressing the living against piles of bodies until Jon is nearly buried beneath his own men. Then the Knights of the Vale arrive. Sansa had secretly asked Littlefinger for help. Their cavalry breaks the Bolton formation, allowing Jon to enter Winterfell. Ramsay retreats to the castle and claims his walls are strong. Jon reminds him that his army is gone. After beating Ramsay in single combat, Jon leaves him alive for Sansa. She releases his starving hounds. Ramsay claimed that his dogs were loyal beasts. Their hunger proves stronger than loyalty. The Stark banners rise over Winterfell again. In King's Landing, Cersei refuses to attend her trial at the Great Sept. Margaery recognizes the danger, but the Faith blocks the exits. Beneath the building, wildfire ignites. The explosion destroys the Sept, killing the High Sparrow, Margaery, Loras, Mace Tyrell, Kaven Lannister, and much of the ruling class. Tommen watches the destruction from the Red Keep. Without speaking, he removes his crown and steps from a window. All three of Cersei's children are dead. She takes the Iron Throne herself. At Winterfell, the Northern Lords proclaim Jon king in the north, unaware that his blood may give him a claim to far more. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys finally sails for Westeros with dragons, unsullied, Dothraki, Greyjoy ships, and Tyrion at her side. The board has narrowed. Cersei controls the throne. Jon controls the north. Daenerys is crossing the sea, and the Night King is marching toward them all. Daenerys Targaryen reaches Dragonstone without a battle. She was born there during a storm, smuggled away as an infant, and raised in exile. Now she returns with 3 dragons, the Unsullied, the Dothraki, the Greyjoy fleet, and enough allies to challenge Cersei directly. She enters the castle and touches the sand of Westeros for the first time. Then she asks Tyrion whether they should begin. Daenerys could attack King's Landing immediately, but Tyrion warns that using dragons against the capital would make her appear to be another foreign conqueror burning the people she intends to rule. Instead, they design a campaign using Westerosi allies to surround Cersei while the Unsullied capture Casterly Rock. The plan depends on Cersei behaving predictably. She does not. Euron Greyjoy allies himself with the Crown, destroys Yara's fleet, and captures Yara, Ellaria Sand, and Ellaria's daughter Tyene. Cersei poisons Tyene in front of her mother, using the same type of poison that killed Myrcella, then leaves Ellaria alive to watch her daughter die. Jaime leads the Lannister army against Highgarden, while the Unsullied discover that Casterly Rock has little strategic value. Olenna Tyrell is defeated, but before drinking poison supplied by Jaime, she admits that she arranged Joffrey's murder. She wants Cersei to know. Olenna dies denying the Lannisters the satisfaction of fear, but Daenerys has lost another ally. Her cautious strategy is collapsing, and patience begins to feel like weakness. When Jaime's army transports the wealth and food taken from Highgarden, Daenerys attacks with the Dothraki and Drogon. The battle shows Westeros what a dragon means outside legend. Defensive lines disappear beneath fire. Armored men burn inside their equipment. Jaime attempts to kill Daenerys while she removes a spear from Drogon, but Bronn knocks him into the water before the dragon can destroy them both. Daenerys wins decisively. She then offers captured soldiers a choice: kneel or die. Most kneel. Randall and Dickon Tarly refuse. Tyrion urges imprisonment, but Daenerys burns them alive. The execution is legally defensible within the brutal customs of Westeros, yet it reveals the growing tension inside her idea of liberation. Daenerys wants people to choose her freely, but refusal increasingly leads to fire. Jon Snow arrives at Dragonstone seeking dragonglass. He has learned that the island contains enormous deposits of the material capable of killing White Walkers. Daenerys expects him to recognize her as queen. Jon refuses, insisting that arguments over titles mean nothing compared with the army of the dead. Neither initially trusts the other. Daenerys sees a northern rebel asking for resources while rejecting her authority. Jon sees a ruler demanding submission before accepting a danger that threatens everyone. As they spend time together, resistance becomes respect. Daenerys allows Jon to mine the dragonglass, while Jon sees that she is more than the destructive daughter of the Mad King. Inside the caves, they discover ancient images showing that the children of the forest and the first men once fought the White Walkers together. The message is clear. Old enemies survived only by becoming allies. Bran returns to Winterfell, but the boy who left is almost gone. As the new three-eyed raven, he speaks with unsettling distance and carries memories extending beyond his own life. Arya also returns home. Her reunion with Sansa is loving but uneasy. Both sisters survived by developing opposite skills. Sansa learned social concealment and political patience. Arya learned violence, suspicion, and independence. Littlefinger attempts to turn those differences into conflict. He plants an old letter Sansa wrote under Cersei's control and allows Arya to find it. Each sister briefly appears to suspect the other of betrayal, but Littlefinger fails to understand how much they have learned. Sansa calls him before the Lords of the North, then lists his crimes: the murder of Lysa Arryn, the betrayal of Ned Stark, and the conspiracy that began with Jon Arryn's death. Bran confirms what he has seen. Arya executes Littlefinger with his own dagger. The man who claimed chaos was a ladder finally discovers that every ladder can be removed. Jon knows that Cersei will never support the war against the dead without evidence, so a small group travels beyond the wall to capture a White. The mission brings together Jon, Tormund, Jorah, the Hound, Beric, Gendry, and others whose histories should make cooperation impossible. They succeed in capturing one of the dead, but become trapped on a frozen lake. Daenerys flies north with her dragons to rescue them. The Night King throws an ice spear through Viserion's neck. Daenerys watches one of her children die while saving people committed to Jon's mission. Jon later kneels to her, not because she demanded it, but because her sacrifice has earned his loyalty. After the living escape, the Night King raises Viserion from the frozen water. At King's Landing, the captured White convinces almost everyone that the threat is real. Cersei publicly promises to help, but privately tells Jaime that she intends to let her enemies fight the dead while she preserves her own army. Jaime finally leaves her. For years, he treated their relationship as the only loyalty that mattered. Walking away doesn't erase his past, but it proves that Cersei can no longer define every choice he makes. At Eastwatch, the army of the dead reaches the wall. The Night King rides the resurrected Viserion. Blue fire tears through the ancient structure, creating a passage large enough for the dead to enter the Seven Kingdoms. The barrier protecting humanity for thousands of years collapses in minutes. The final season begins with every major force converging at Winterfell. Jon returns with Daenerys, her armies, and her dragons. Arya sees Jon for the first time since their childhood. Jaime arrives alone and faces Bran, the boy he pushed from a tower. Bran does not demand vengeance. He understands that the person Jaime became was shaped partly by that crime. Without the fall, Bran would never have traveled north or become the three-eyed raven. Sam then tells Jon the truth about his parents. Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark were married in secret. Jon's true name is Aegon Targaryen, and his claim to the throne is stronger than Daenerys's. Jon never wanted a crown, but the information changes everything. Daenerys has built her identity around being the last Targaryen and rightful heir. Jon's existence threatens both beliefs. Worse, people naturally trust and admire him without requiring displays of power. Before that conflict can fully develop, the dead arrive. The battle begins in darkness. The Dothraki charge with flaming swords, only for their lights to vanish in the distance. The defenders are overwhelmed. The crypts become deadly when the buried corpses rise, and the Night King approaches Bran beneath the weirwood tree. Theon Greyjoy makes his final stand protecting Bran. He cannot undo the children he killed or the home he betrayed, but he dies defending a Stark inside Winterfell. Bran tells him that he is a good man, giving Theon the acceptance he spent his life seeking from the wrong people. The Night King reaches for his weapon. Arya attacks from the darkness. He catches her, but she drops the Valyrian steel dagger into her other hand and drives it into him. The weapon once used in the attempt on Bran's life destroys the enemy who came to kill Bran. The Night King shatters. Every White Walker and White falls with him. Humanity survives, but the political conflict resumes almost immediately. During the victory feast, Jon is surrounded by friends while Daenerys sits isolated. Jorah is dead. Her Dothraki and Unsullied have suffered enormous losses. The people of the North respect her sacrifice, but they love Jon. Daenerys asks him to hide his identity. Jon tells Sansa and Arya, believing family trust matters more than political secrecy. Sansa tells Tyrion, who tells Varys. The truth spreads because every person who hears it recognizes that Jon may be a safer ruler. Daenerys loses Rhaegal to Euron's fleet and watches Cersei execute Missandei outside King's Landing. Varys attempts to support Jon and is burned for treason. By the time Daenerys attacks the capital, grief, fear, and suspicion have consumed nearly every relationship that once restrained her. The city's bells ring in surrender. Daenerys has won. Then she burns King's Landing. Drogon destroys soldiers, streets, and civilians long after organized resistance has ended. Grey Worm begins killing surrendered troops, and the promised liberation becomes a massacre. Jaime enters the Red Keep after trying to save Cersei. He fights Euron, reaches his sister, and attempts to lead her through the tunnels beneath the city. Their escape is blocked. Jaime and Cersei die together as the Red Keep collapses around them. For Jaime, the ending is painfully circular. He moved toward honor, protected Brienne, and fought for the living, but could not permanently free himself from Cersei. The relationship that defined his worst decisions becomes the place where his story ends. After the destruction, Daenerys addresses her armies and promises to continue liberating the world. Her language reveals that King's Landing was not an isolated loss of control. She now believes her judgment is the only reliable definition of goodness. Anyone opposing her vision can be classified as an enemy of freedom. Tyrion resigns as Hand and is arrested. He tells Jon that love cannot excuse what Daenerys has become. Jon still hopes she can be guided, but when he speaks with her inside the ruined throne room, Daenerys shows no genuine doubt. She believes she knows what is good. Other people do not get to choose. Jon embraces her and drives a dagger into her heart. Drogon finds Daenerys' body. He directs his fire not at Jon, but at the Iron Throne, melting the symbol that consumed rulers, families, and kingdoms for generations. Then he carries Daenerys away. Her ending is tragic because the qualities that made her inspiring never completely disappeared. She fought slavery, protected the vulnerable, and repeatedly risked herself for followers. But moral certainty gradually became permission to treat disagreement as corruption. She wanted to break the wheel. In the end, she tried to become the only person allowed to control it. The surviving leaders gather to decide Westeros' future. Tyrion argues that the next ruler should be chosen rather than produced automatically through inheritance. Bran Stark is selected as king. He cannot father children, meaning future rulers will also need to be chosen. The solution does not create democracy or erase the power of noble houses, but it weakens the hereditary system that produced Joffrey and turned every royal marriage into a potential war. Sansa refuses to return the North to southern control. The North becomes an independent kingdom, with Sansa crowned its queen. The girl who once dreamed of leaving Winterfell ends by ruling it, not through fantasy, but through knowledge purchased at extraordinary cost. Arya sails west to explore lands beyond existing maps. She has spent years reclaiming her name, yet she no longer needs that name to confine her to one home. Tyrion becomes Bran's Hand, condemned to spend his life repairing the damage created by the rulers he advised. Grey Worm takes the Unsullied toward Nath, fulfilling a plan he once shared with Missandei. Jon is sent back to the Night's Watch to satisfy the forces demanding punishment for Daenerys' death. But when he reaches the Wall, he finds the surviving wildlings preparing to return north. Jon rides with them beyond the broken boundary. Whether this is exile or freedom depends on what Jon ever truly wanted. He never desired the Iron Throne. He felt most accepted among people outside the political order of Westeros. The series ends not with someone sitting triumphantly on the throne, but with the throne gone. That is the final meaning behind the title. The game was never a noble contest designed to discover the best ruler. It was a system that rewarded ambition, secrecy, and inherited violence while distracting everyone from threats that required cooperation. Ned lost because he believed honesty would control power. Robb lost because personal honor could not repair a political promise. Cersei gained power by protecting her family and then lost every child because of the choices she made in their name. Daenerys sought justice until she could no longer imagine justice existing outside her own will. The surviving Stark children endure because each learns something different. Sansa understands institutions and people. Arya understands identity and survival. Bran carries memory. Jon understands that leadership is service rather than possession. The final seasons remain deeply divisive because transformations developed over many years often reach their conclusions with extraordinary speed. Daenerys' isolation, Jaime's return to Cersei, Bran's selection, and the defeat of the Night King all follow ideas planted earlier, but many viewers felt the final movement did not give those ideas enough time to breathe. That controversy became part of the show's legacy. Yet Game of Thrones remains a landmark because it treated fantasy as political tragedy, gave consequences to decisions other stories might forget, and convinced millions of viewers that conversations in council chambers could be as dangerous as battles involving dragons. Its greatest warning is also its simplest. Power does not reveal who deserves to rule. Power reveals what a person is willing to destroy in order to keep ruling. And after 8 seasons of broken vows, fallen families, frozen armies, and burning cities, the person who finally wins the game is the one who never chased the throne at all. If you want more complete series journeys told with the story, character logic, hidden connections, and endings brought together, stay with Series Span Cinema.